The Boy Who Reversed Himself by William Sleator. 4. He began cutting a shape out of a piece of paper. Now what I'm going to show you is the difference between a flat two-dimensional world and the three-dimensional world we live in, he said, sounding a little like a lisping professor. That will help you understand what it's like for me to go into the fourth dimension. Oh, come off it, Omar, I said. The fourth dimension is just a hypothetical math concept. Or else it's time or something. Just a lot of sci-fi crud. You expect me to believe that? He looked at me. Do you believe what happened to my face and all the rest of me? I didn't have an answer. Put your ear against my chest, he said. What for? I asked, backing my chair away from him. I just want you to listen to my heart, he explained patiently. Do you really want to understand this or not? Well, okay. I leaned forward and put my ear against the left side of his chest where the heart is. I can't hear anything, I said finally. I wondered if he were some kind of robot without a heart at all. Try the other side, but... I was about to protest. The heart was always on the left side of the body. Then I was struck by the obvious. I pressed my ear against the right side of his chest. There it was, thumping away, directly opposite where it should have been. Now are you going to believe me about the fourth dimension? What could I say? Nothing he could tell me would be any harder to believe than a person's heart being on the wrong side of his body. It wasn't just his features that had reversed. It was everything else about him, too. Yes, I believe you, I said. Please just get on with it. Okay. Now try to imagine a two-dimensional world. It's flat, like this piece of paper. The people who live there are flat, too, like paper dolls. On the surface of the paper, they can go up and down and from side to side, but they can't come up off the paper or go down underneath it. That would be going into the third dimension. They're like comic strip characters stuck to the page. All right, I get the picture. But what does that have to do with your body changing sides, or how you opened my locker? I want to know exactly how you did that. I'm telling you, he drew a square on the paper, 4 thick connected lines. Next to the square, he drew a stick figure. Then he put a little scrap of paper inside the square. Now, this is two-dimensional Laura and her two-dimensional locker, with the report inside it. 2D Laura can't go through these solid lines. They're solid walls to her, so there's no way she can get into the locker. Go on. All right. Now here comes 3D Omar. He pushed a crude cutout figure across the page. It was a person in profile, facing to the left with a big nose. Now Omar wants to help Laura get the report out of the locker, and Omar can do something Laura doesn't know how to do. He can go into the third dimension. So he went into the third dimension. So if he went into the third dimension, where does the figure go? I guess up off the sheet of paper. That's right. He lifted the cutout off the paper and moved it over until it was directly above the square. And from the third dimension, the locker looks to him the way it looks to us. He can see over the walls. Omar can easily reach into the locker from 3 space and get the report without even opening the locker. He just goes over and reaches in. Make sense? Yeah, I guess it does. He took the scrap of paper out of the square and put it on the cutout's hand. Then he moved the cutout back to the right side of the square and put it down on the paper. Then Omar goes back to 2D space and gives Laura the report. He looked at me and smiled. See? And it works just the same way if a 3D person like me can go into the fourth dimension. From out there, I can just reach into things without opening them. That's how I got the report out of your locker. I didn't have to bother trying to open it. Wait a minute. Yes, I could see how a flat 2D person, if he were somehow able to lift himself up off the page, could reach into a closed square without opening it. But it wasn't so easy to imagine a 3D person like Omar lifting himself somewhere out of our space and reaching into my closed locker. But where is it? I asked him. Where is up out of 3D space? I can't picture it. Because you've never been there. That's why I have to explain it in 2 and 3 space instead of 3 and 4. I was still skeptical. But how about the way your left and right sides got switched? Show me how that works. Nothing to it. He sounded more sure of himself than I'd ever heard him. He slid the cutout figure with the left-facing profile nose around on the paper. As long as 2D Omar is stuck in 2D space on the flat page, he's always going to be facing to the left. But Omar can lift himself up into 3 space. He held the figure above the paper. And what would happen if he turned over in 3 space? Something that could never happen on the flat page. He flipped the figure over onto its other side. Now the nose pointed to the right, and then he went back into 2 space. He set the figure down on the paper, the nose pointing to the right. He would be the reverse of what he had been before, his own mirror image. Now do you understand? He sat back in his chair and folded his arms. You got flipped over in force space? I said, keeping as far away from him as the small desk would allow. He nodded and gestured with his left hand. See, when I tossed the report in there before, it must have flipped over in force space as it fell and got reversed. So when I went in to get it, I picked it up and then turned around in force space to unreverse the report, and that reversed me. But how did you know I'd left the report at home? Did Mom ask you to bring it to school? No, I just peeked inside your house when I was walking past, and I saw that you'd forgotten it, and I couldn't stand to think of what was going to happen to you in school, so I just went into your house from force space and got it. I probably shouldn't have. But didn't Mom and Dad see you? They were there, but they couldn't see me. When I'm in force space, I'm outside of people's field of vision. You mean you're invisible? Not exactly. He shifted in his chair. I mean, if people knew what to look for, they might notice the part of me that was sticking into 3 space. But most people don't know what to look for. That means you could do practically anything, I said. If I hadn't had proof, I wouldn't have believed any of this, but I had plenty of proof, and I was getting excited. What's it like out there, Omar? What does it feel like? What does everything look like? And could you ever bring somebody else out there with you? No, I won't do that. He pushed his chair back and hastily got up, backing away from me. I have to go now, and please, don't ever ask me to take you out there. Please don't, Laura. See you later. And he left. But I had already persuaded him to give in once, and I was sure I could do it again. And that's the end of chapter 4.